Hey everybody, we are looking at the long form of this Toshiba Satellite 1905 S301. This is one I pulled out of the recycler today. Battery cover, or excuse me, the memory cover, totally gone off of this. As a matter of fact, whoever owned it before they threw it out, covered it up with some cardboard wrapped in electrical tape. Really honestly didn't do too bad a job replicating that cover. Pulled the battery off. For the most part, the battery pack looks okay. I mean, we've got like a little bit of built-up corrosion on the side, but it's possible this thing's okay. That being said, I really doubt this system's got any life left in it, but I think all the components are here. So aside from being a little stuck, which is probably due to, I mean, it was raining just before I pulled this out of the bucket it was in, and with that being said, I don't have a whole lot of hope. Oh, we got a dog hair there. Whoever had it must have had a dog, but I don't have a whole lot of hope everything's still good, but honestly, just looks like we got a missing screw here from this heat shield. Just about everything looks to be here. So it's possible that we might be able to get some semblance of a boot going out of this, but we'll see how far we want to get into it. I don't know that we're going to be able to breathe any life into this, but so far so good. This is an older model now. This actually has a laptop floppy drive right here. So that alone, I think, is worth trying to salvage. Just because I don't know that I've ever seen this late a model with a built-in floppy. That being said, these screws are awfully tight and rusted into place. But we're going to do our best to try and get everything apart here. Really like to see what kind of CPU this thing's running. Just because, again, I don't know that I've seen a Toshiba Satellite quite this old, but this is awfully bulky. Now this must be some kind of a media center version because it's got giant built-in speakers in the back. So I'm assuming that that has something to do with its size, is that it's intended for multimedia. Now one thing I am running into is these are so corroded. My screwdriver's just wanting to round off in there. So I'm going to try and find a better screwdriver to get at this here. And I've got a number of them hanging around, so we'll try just a standard one. Yeah, that's either stripped or corroded so bad. Ideally, I want to try and tear this down without just, taking a Dremel tool or something to it to just cut open the plastic, but may not be possible, and that's okay, because honestly, this thing's probably DOA, but we'll do what we can to try and salvage what we've got here. I do think this one's destined for the recycler to hit that life cycle. I don't think there's much here that's going to be salvageable other than possibly a processor. Now these older laptops tended to come with full-size desktop processors in them, and that's kind of my hope, is that when we get this apart eventually, we'll find a desktop style processor that we might be able to salvage and maybe fit into a motherboard at some point. But again, that's all going to kind of hinge on what we find inside. Although looking in the memory bay, I have to say it's rather clean. The cardboard and tape job seems to have done its job there a little bit and protected this somewhat. Now again, I pulled this out of, I mean, it was literally sitting in a couple inches of water. So I'm not terribly surprised that I'm having a bit of a time trying to get at it. But we're going to give it a good old honest try, and worst case scenario, we'll just cut it open and break it. But I'm going to see if we can finagle some different tools here, and we'll pick this up in just a minute. But before I cut it, so I know you guys don't want to see me just fiddle around all day with this, let's take a look at our memory. So this should give us a gauge on the age. This is a SODIMM 512 DDR, and it looks like a little bit of water damage on it, but I think that'll clean up okay. Otherwise, it looks to be in good working order. Looks like maybe the caps are a little gnarly on it, but I've seen these in worse condition clean up and be okay, so we'll set that off to the side for now. I don't have a lot of laptop DDR. Normally, I don't do a lot of laptop stuff, so we'll get into a few of these, but I'm going to go ahead and see how much farther I can get and try and get the shell off and pick this up. Okay, well, we found our processor compartment and was able to get this heatsink off, and look at that, just blocked. Obviously, whoever owned this never cleaned it, probably because it's kind of a bear to get out. But we've got a desktop processor. Let's take a look and see what kind it is. And not to mention, this is a nice heavy copper heatsink. And who would have guessed a P4 hiding under there? Kind of explains the heavy copper heatsink. Not bad, really. Not super familiar with mobile P4s. I'll have to look this one up. Alright, so now that we've rescued the P4 out of here, and what would appear to be a mobile type hard drive, and I don't know if we can actually use this for anything other than on this motherboard. Begs the question if there's anything else here worth salvaging, and or if we try and figure out a way to make this system fire up on its own. Now looking at the processor area, I mean the fan is nice and free in there. There's some rust on the speaker covers, but realistically, it's fairly clean inside. My only concern is if we try and get power running to this, even if we can find a compatible cord, if we're able to get power running, if we'd have any shot in hell at trying to get this system to boot with what's in it, and I don't really want the battery to explode. So the decision now is, do we try and pull the motherboard out completely and then see if we can get this to boot on a bench, on just the wood top here? I think that's probably the safest route. And then it's just a matter of trying to get power run to this. The other thing is, I don't know if I'll be able to get an external screen going or not. It kind of depends on whether or not the VGA works on here. It does have S-Video out, which is kind of cool. And it looks like the cord here sits in back, so it'd kind of just be a matter of figuring out what kind of voltage we need, and seeing if I've got a cable with a barrel that'll fit, and trying to get power. So let's see if we can get the shield off the bottom of the machine here and just take a better look at the motherboard and see, is this something we can maybe make work? Well, I wasn't able to get the bottom plate off all the way like I had wanted to. Unfortunately, basically, I can't ever seem to figure out how to get the motherboards out without potentially completely ripping this apart and breaking plastic shards everywhere. I got most of the component, or I should say I got all the components out that I cared to see. The screen is totally roached. I mean, there's bubbles in it. This is not something that would be salvageable anyway. It's junk. But it's kind of interesting just to see how these were designed back in the day. Given the level of rust and stuff I see just underneath the keyboard, and the condition of the system overall, I don't think it would be possible to save this even if I wanted to. The good news is it's got some interesting stuff to it. If we close it up here, you can see the shell in the front has the typical plastic snaps, but I wasn't able to get all the way around to the back. I think because it's a media unit, but oh well. So I was able to get everything out. I got the processor and the memory, so that's kind of the biggest things. I did pull the floppy, which is just a ribbon cable connector. Probably could figure out a way to make some kind of an adapter. However, when you look at it here, it's all rusted and corroded at the bottom. There's a good chance the motor in here is shot anyway. Really too bad, because otherwise it would have been kind of fun to have one of these laying around. But just interesting to see a floppy out of this. I did also pull the CD drive. It's actually a CD RW DVD ROM drive, which is pretty cool. Typical tappy connection on this. That being said, it is also got water inside of it, which is rusted components. I'm going to doubt that this thing is functional. And again, the battery pack on this pretty heavily corroded, so this one's going in the scrap pile, but it was a lot of fun to take apart, and the P4, definitely something worth giving a home. I'm pretty excited to have another P4 in the collection. I don't have many P4s, honestly, so that's fun to add. But stay tuned. We'll have more of these teardowns coming, and hopefully we'll have some that we might actually be able to hopefully boot.